Recording here. Today we are going to be talking about the graduation points module. Can you guys all see my screen okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Real quick, I had several report that they did not get the memo for today's meeting with the link in it and the training, the guide information. So did anyone receive that was sent out yesterday afternoon? Sure did not. Okay, we'll check into that. But they come from Corsizio, so let me check into that. We'll see what's going on with that. So I apologize. Please know you can always find the training links also on the customer portal. If you go out here under training and webinars, the training links are always, or the links to access the Zoom sessions are always posted up here as well. Right, and also we do have an assessments and pre-ID training this afternoon at 1 o'clock. And then next Thursday from 9 to 10 will be registration, withdrawal, and student import training that Amy will be doing. So let's go ahead and get started with the graduation points. So I put a link in the chat box there. Let me repost it since we've had several messages since then. But this is where you can go to access the information on ODE site about the graduation requirements for the state of Ohio. There's a nice handout that summarizes it. If you click down here I went to the 2023 and click the new requirements, there is a nice quick handout that just summarizes everything real quick there for you. And then there's also other documentation that provides more details on that. So let's jump into student information here. The first thing I want to talk about is we know the graduation requirements have changed over the years. And I'm sorry, I need to make sure this is recording here. Yes. Okay. So as things have evolved with graduation requirements, obviously the application has been updated as well. And so depending on what the student's fiscal year began 9th is, that will determine what tabs you see on the graduation points. The fiscal year began 9th is here on the profile under the FN Attributes tab. So a typical, this is a 12th grader, he's going to have a fiscal year began 9th of 2018. And if we go to his graduation points, we are going to see 3 tabs. We're going to see the 2018 plus optional, the 2018 and beyond, and then also the permanent requirements tab, which of course was just added here recently. So based on his fiscal year began 9th, that's what we'll see. If I put in a 9th grader who his fiscal year began 9th is going to be 2021, and we take a look at his graduation points summary page, we're only going to see the permanent requirements tab down here for him. Okay, so if you're missing information, we do have a lot of questions because people, when they have a 12th grader in context, they don't see the ELA 1, which is no longer required. And that is because when you go to the graduation point summary page, by default, it's going to that permanent requirements tab. So ELA 1 is not listed in the details there for those students. All right, so overview of graduation points. This is at the beginning of the document, also the graduation points guide, and of course you can also find it on ODE's site. But a quick summary is they still must earn a minimum of 20 credits in specific subject areas, and then also have instruction in econ and financial literacy, and 2 semesters of fine arts. Okay, they must also take the required state assessments, and then the big change now is they must show competency in Algebra 1 and ELA 2. In order to show competency, that requires them to have a score of 684 on each of those tests. Or there are also 3 alternative ways they can demonstrate competency. The first one is going to be College Credit Plus to earn college credit on a non-remedial math or English. The next would be the career experience and technical skills, and then military readiness is also an option. And then lastly, they have to show readiness, which there are 12 diploma seals, and they have to earn at least 2 of these, and one of them must be a state-defined seal. Okay, so let's get into the graduation points module here. First, I want to take a look at the graduation points search. This begins on page 2 in the document. So if we go to graduation points search, there's multiple filter options here. We can filter by grade, the counselor, ad hoc groups and membership. So if we want to look at all 12th graders, we can select grade 12, click search, and have a list of those students all returned. And as you scroll down, you can see the different statuses that are here for these. If the student only has the permanent requirements tab, that's the values that show. Okay, so any students like freshmen are only going to have the permanent requirements, or what's going to show down here for them. But with these 12th graders, by default, it is showing the 2018 totals. So that's what you're going to see in the credit or the search results that are returned. So if we want to see just students who have not completed, you can see Dolores Anderson down here is showing complete. We do have an option to show incomplete also here, and search and find those. And then to remove our filters, we're just going to click clear. But by clicking into the clicking the blue link for the student's name here, that's going to take us right to the student's graduation point summary. And we can view the results for the details for that student as if we just went to that page directly. Okay, the one thing, we do have an ER to not have to resubmit the search criteria. Go back here. Okay, so if you go into the student and you make any updates to them, like say you add an exemption for those students and then click return to search, you have to resubmit that search criteria. So we do have an enhancement not to have to do that. Okay. Moving on, the job to refresh the data for the students. I'm sure most of you are familiar with this and have done this before. If you have a student in context and you're on their graduation point summary page, you can rerun the graduation points job just for that specific student by clicking this check for updated information. You can see this was last updated this morning at 5:06 a.m. by the Dazzle DBA. That tells me that it was the nightly job that ran overnight for this district. So the job is scheduled at the ITC level, and it refreshes the graduation points for all districts and students at a specific time. Typically, it's done through the nighttime hours. Districts, and you can see here it updated. I just refreshed it, so now it's showing my username with the time I did that. You can turn the refresh on and off. I'm not sure how many actually would do this, but if you go to the district level and go to district options, it's being kind of slow here this morning. If I go into district options, I can see at the bottom there's a job that I can turn on or turn off that nightly job to run. So listed down here, you would just uncheck if you don't want the graduation points recalculated each day. All right, moving back to the high school, this data in here is all scrambled too, so none of this is real student data that we have here. So let's move down to page 8. And we're going to look at the credits for a student. So let me go to the graduation point summary here. And this is that student who was 12th grade, and we saw she had completed everything. So let's take a look at her credits information here. You notice a lot of the eyes here, hover over them, and they have just general information in there, so you can do that in various areas of the graduation points module. But you can see it's a minimum of 20 credits. receive instruction in econ and financial literacy, and complete at least 2 semesters of fine arts. So here we can see this student has completed everything. If we wanted to see this in a different view and know exactly how many credits she got for each area, we can click on this little caret over here, and it's going to give us the summary here, including the credits. So here we can see for social studies, she earned 4 credits, and only 3 of those were required. Okay, if we want to go in and view the details for each one, either from this screen or from this screen, we can simply click on the view option next to that subject area and see exactly what courses the student has completed and how much they earned in each one. And this is showing these are courses that are in process still for the student. So once she completes these, she's going to have a total of 6.5 earned credits out of the 4 required. So you can do that for each subject area that are in there. You will notice back on this page that the econ and financial literacy does not have a view option. Okay, this has to be indicated on the FN graduate tab, and they have to have received instruction just during grades 9 through 12. So that's something that's going to be marked for a student. So let me jump over to one who does not have this marked. So we can see Roberto here, his just shows incomplete. And again, if we wanted to see the credits he has met out of each subject area, we can click and get a quick summary of that. But in order to mark his econ and financial literacy, I'm going to go to his edit profile. And then we're going to go to the FN graduate tab. And there's several checkboxes that are on here. Or not checkboxes, drop down. So this first one, the core economics and financial literacy, we're just going to select yes. Let's go ahead and just say this student has already met his fine arts requirements. We can mark that here also. And you can see here, exempted from physical education, they already have that marked as a yes. So I'm going to go ahead and save that record, and then we're going to go back and recalculate his graduation points. And one thing to keep in mind is the fine arts is only going to show completed when it's entered on the FN graduate tab, even if the kid already has 2 semester requirements. So that does always have to be physically marked as well. As it's recalculating, you can see here his physical education, it does show exempt on here. If he did have courses also for phys ed, if you view, you can see the details for those as well. But once this job has completed, now we can see his econ and financial literacy and fine arts are both marked complete there. Moving on, let's get into the graduation pathways. And of course, as I've mentioned several times, what is displayed depends on, the fiscal year began 9th that is marked for the students. So I'm going to change students here who has additional tabs. I'm not sure if he's 11th or 12th grader. Okay, so for the permanent requirements, any student with 2020 or later as their fiscal year began 9th must meet these permanent requirements. There's no other options for them. And of course, fiscal year began 9th, 2018, 19, they can use these or the other options that are listed here. So all of this is in the guide as well. So let's take a look at the permanent requirements here. We can see on this page, it's still showing for state assessment. It's showing 12 out of 18 points. Now, the points are not required on the state assessments anymore. They just have to complete them. So we know there's more updates that need done to this graduation points page. This is just same as what it is on the 2018 requirements tab. But the important indicator here is going to be the second one where this says 5 out of 6 required assessments taken. They do still have to take all 6 assessments. Okay, it was previously 7. So as we know, ELA 1 is no longer a required assessment. So if we click in here to view the details for that, we're not going to see ELA 1 listed. So this student only has to take his government end of course exam yet. What it is looking at here on this page down here under show competency, it's looking to see if the student showed competency in Algebra 1 and English 2. And in order to do that, they must have a score of 684 on those tests. So we can see for this student, it's showing in progress, and we can see English is completed and Algebra is in progress. So if we go look at this student's end of course exams and take a look at his Algebra, he likely should have a score at less than 684 on his algebra end of course. And we can see here he had a 645, so that he has not met that requirement yet. So of course the student can take that test again to try to hit that requirement. He has taken it twice. Or there's additional options that he can use to meet the meet that competency requirement. So down here under this, the additional options are listed here under this caret, and this information begins on page 17. So the first one is demonstrate 2 career-focused activities. We're going to talk more about the industry credentials here after a bit, but they do have the web exam and the pre-apprenticeship that can be used there. And then also down here you have their work-based learning experience, the workforce readiness, and the Ohio Means Job Readiness Seal. Another option is they can be enlisted in the military. And then the final one is completing the college coursework. So in that one, it's going to look at the EMIS subject area and the is dual credit that is set for a student. In doing some testing this week, there is more work that needs done there. The English is showing completed, but for some reason the algebra, even with the required EMIS subject areas for credit marked, EMIS subject codes, I'm sorry, it is not showing that math completed, so we need to do some additional testing on that. But they can use any of these options, 1, 2, or 3, in place of this show competency on the algebra and the ELA2 end of course exams. Okay. And then the final thing in the permanent requirements is down here for show readiness. You can see this student has earned 0 out of 2 seals. If we view the details, there's nothing going to be listed in there for him because he has not does not have any of those seal requirements checked yet. In order to do that, these are all marked on the student exemptions and requirements page. So if we go back to graduation points in the breadcrumb trail, and I click under the student exemptions requirements, down here, this last one, you'll notice all of these options open up. They're closed when you open them or when you open the page, because he does not have anything marked under any of them at this time. But if I click the caret for the state system of diploma seals earned, I can select whatever seals this student has earned. Go ahead and mark 3 of them. And then I'm going to click update exemptions here. And once I go back to the graduation points, I still need to refresh the graduation point summary page by clicking on the button in the upper right. So I'm going to go back to a summary, and we're going to click that, and we should see the seals are now, that portion is now showing as complete.
Devin, there is a question.
When you say subject area, it's the EMIS subject area for credit. What subject area miscellaneous? Yes, the EMIS subject area for credit is what it is looking at on the course. Go down here and we can see the student earned 3 out of the 2 required seals in view, and it is the view, or it's going to show us the 3 items that were checked here. Okay, this student, being that he is a 2021 graduate, he does still have the 2018 plus requirements tab showing. So if we click over here, this one is dependent on the number of points the students have earned. Okay, so if we go in here and view the details for the student, we can see he's only taken 6 out of the 7 also. So we do see the ELA 1 and that total being included in here, and he's earned 6 out of 4 there. But we can still see the details here for this student. And when I mentioned some updates that need made on the permanent requirements, in addition to this 12 out of 18, when you go in and view the details here for these state assessments, they do still show the required values here too, which those are not applicable anymore either. And I've not heard when those updates will be coming for sure yet. And then the last option for this student to meet the graduation requirements is the optional pathways. And these are marked also on the student exemptions and requirements tab. And so that you'll notice we have the graduation option and the career tech option. And if we go back to that exemptions and requirements page, we'll see those carrots that can be expanded to manually mark information in there. So under here, under graduation requirements, if they met some of those, and then also the career tech requirements here. So I know there's a lot in there with the various requirements and the tabs that are in student information right now for these students. Is there any questions on the tabs, or when they should show, when they should not show, or the details that you're seeing on there right now? Okay. There is also another tab that could appear for a student. If we look at student 997270, we're going to see he has an alternative requirements tab in addition to these 3 tabs. Okay, this tab is only going to display for students who have taken an alternate assessment. For the alternate assessments, they must complete the 4 required assessments for graduation, and these are entered as alternates under the OGT assessments. So for this, students must be proficient in reading, math, science, and social studies. So if we look at this student, we can see he has completed 4 out of 4 here. And if we click the view details, it's going to look a little different than it did for the state assessments, but we can see the levels he has met on each one of these alternate assessments that he has marked. I do want to point out there is an issue with this page when they have the alternate assessments. This tab does not display unless the student has passed at least one part of the test. So if they have attempts, it should be displaying, but unless they've actually passed one part, it will not display. So you can see here, this student, the tab is there because he did complete or pass his math portion, but these say student did not take science, social studies, or reading. If we go into his assessments under the OGTs, we're going to see that he in fact did complete those. So unless a student actually passes, it's not showing back there, and that is a defect that we currently have with that. So we can see he has taken all of them. It just happens to be math's the only one he has passed, and therefore that's the only one that will show as even attempted back there. Any questions on that tab? All right. Some of the end of course assessments are also entered with a score not reported value. So there's various items that can be marked for the score not reported. Get into this. Let me switch students here. If a student has a record entered in here and they have a score not reported and they have actual points in there, those points will be included in their state assessment totals. Okay, so this student, we can see here, he has an entry for ELA2 and his score not reported has an A, but he has 2 points listed here. This one, a score not reported of B, and they did not put a score in here. That's for geometry. So when we go back here and look at the state assessment summary for this student, you can see he only has 3 out of 18 points there, and we're going to view his details. And you see that one, they entered a score not reported of A, but because they gave him points, he does have 2 points showing here. Now for geometry, he had the invalid, or was it INV/did not attempt marked, so that's why it's still showing he did not even take it. And then for the geometry or math 2, it is showing also with the score not reported of B, and they did have a 0 in there for him. So those are the values that will show on this page based still on the points the student has entered. The state assessments may also be adjusted if a student transfers in from out of state, or maybe they were previously homeschooled and they didn't have test scores. They can receive some transfer credits for certain end of course assessments. So if you look on the guide on page 30, there's a graduation point requirement for transfer student. There's a table on that page, and it will tell you based on how many tests remaining, how many points are still required for the students. So this is still going to be reflected that same way under the permanent requirements tab. So if we have a student who is receiving some prorations, meaning they're not going to have to score as high on these. Let me find my student here. He's showing 0 out of 15 points. Now I can't exactly say the 15 points you were showing for biology, it is prorated. So he's not, may not have any points in there for that if he doesn't actually take the test. But I'm just looking at this and I was just reviewing the guide and I'm not exactly sure that proration, how that's working since the points are not required anymore, what they're doing with that. So I need to do some checking on that, and I will send some information out when I see see more details for that. So I apologize, I didn't have the details for that right now. You can see for any that are prorated though, they're going to be down here in blue if they have any prorations entered under that specific subject area. Making a note here for the prorations. All right, students with IEP exemptions. So if you have students who do have IEP exemptions and they have that marked on the special education grad requirements tab, that student will receive 3 graduation points, which is considered the proficient status toward that specific end of course requirement. One caveat to this is the student must still complete the test. So let's go back here to the student. We have Georgia in context now, and we're going to go to her special education record, and we're going to look at the grad requirements tab. And we can see there's IEPs entered in here for government, algebra 1, and biology 1. They all have the exemption flag set to yes. Okay, so government, algebra, and biology. And if we go here and we look at her end of course records, we're going to see she has taken government and algebra. I think those are the 2. and not yet taken biology. Okay, so here's, well, history, I guess, and algebra is what she's taken, and she had a performance level of 1 on there. So if we go back to her graduation points, and view the details for the state assessments, we're going to see the IEP is listed there for algebra. And then we can, if we click down, we can see that she also took the end of course exam and earned 1 point back in 2018. But for government and biology, because she has not taken either one of those assessments, she's not going to have any points earned back here, even though she has that special education grad exempt option marked. So they must still take the actual end of course exam in order to receive those 3 points. If they would happen to score 3 or higher when they take the end of course exam, that is what would show as being used in the calculations for the state assessments. Okay. Sherry says, I thought when the prorations, it reduced the total they needed. And it does do that, and it still does that. But with the permanent requirements, that 18-point requirement it's not a requirement anymore for them to have the 18 points. They just have to take at least the 6 required assessments, but they have to show competency for the ELA 2 and Algebra 1, or complete one of those alternatives. So I'm not sure exactly what that proration is doing as far as the state assessments in that situation. All right, moving on. So students can also use AP or IB courses or CCP courses to have grades converted so that they're not double testing for certain areas. This only applies to biology, American history, and government. So in those, if they would take a CCP course, they can have that converted or be included in their graduation points, the state assessment, based on the grade they receive. So if we look at another student here, Dwayne, and we're going to go look at his course history, we can see he's going to have completed a CCP government course. I'm going to pull that course up also. So here's his CCP government for the University of Akron. He just took it this year. I just put a final grade in. So let's go over to courses and take a look at the details in that course. It's looking at if dual credit is marked, so that must be marked on the course record. It's also looking at the EMIS subject code, the end of course assessment area, and the curriculum that is marked. Forget what the course was, I'm sorry. No, it was government. Let me flip back here. I apologize. I need to see what the course number was for him. He had it on his course this year, so. CCP 37001. All right, so if we go into this course to edit it, we can see on the course record, they do have it marked as is dual credit, and that one must be marked in order for it to be included. The other thing, items are marked on the EMIS tab of the course itself. And it's looking here, one, at the EMIS subject code. So this is 150300 for American Government. And then down here, they have the end of course assessment area marked for government and the curriculum as PS. And of course, for the advanced placement, they would have the AP or the International Baccalaureate marked there. Okay, so if they have those items marked and the student passes, or depending on the grade that they receive, if we go look at the graduation point summary for this student, we're going to see based on the tables that are on, let's see, page 34, I believe. An A or a B, the student would get 5 points towards graduation, a C is 4, a D is 3. So if we go in here and view the details for this, we can see down here, the student had a B in this course, so he did earn the 5 points, and that is what is displaying here for the state assessment for that student. Also on the permanent requirements tab and also on the 2018 plus tab, you see down here, the college admission. So this is going to display the student's progress towards college readiness. So if we look here, we can see this student has completed the ACT exam and passed all parts of it. If we want to view the details, again, we're going to just click on the view option here. Once we get in here, we can see the student has multiple attempts at taking it. We can tell by the caret that's there. So if we look here, we can see the dates that he took it and also the scores that the student received each time. And we can also see here what the what those remediation-free score requirements are when we view the details. So those are listed there. So if we flip over, since this student has the 2018 plus requirements tab also, if we flip over to that, we can see the same details looking under this tab and seeing the ACT there is showing complete. Okay, I mentioned industry credentials earlier, and this is when a student experiences their education through the work and allows them to learn more about a specific skill or a job. So for this, the students must complete a minimum of 12 points in one industry recognized credential. So industry credentials are entered under the student assessment record also. There's an industry credentials listed there. And if we go down here, we can see this additional options is showing as in progress up here by this indicator. So we look here, we can see his industry credentials. He has 8 out of 12. And if I click here to view the details for that, I can see that the student has completed these 2 industry credentials. Now you do notice that it is listed under arts and communications and also information technology. Many times those industry credentials can be used for different areas. And when we look here, we see he earned 8 out of 12 for this one and 8 out of 12 for this one. Okay, so if he did have another one that was specific only to information technology and say he earned another 4 points, we would see 12 out of 12 earned, meaning that he would have completed that information technology requirement and it would show complete for this student. Okay, so it's only using them just in one area, even though it's going to display all of them that he has. So for this student, we're also going to take a look at the workforce readiness options here. So you'll see 14 out of 14 workforce readiness points. If we flip back to 2000, let's see, was it 2018 and 19 graduates needed 13 points, but for 2020 and beyond, they need 14 points. So that's why it's showing out of 14 here. And then they must also complete at least 3 of the workforce readiness minimum section points. So, and if you're not familiar with those, that information, again, as mentioned, for the industry credentials is entered under student assessment. And then you have industry credentials here, and then you also have the work keys over here. I'm touching back on the student exemptions and requirements page. As I mentioned, you do have to mark the economics and financial literacy and the fine arts and phys ed exemptions on the FN graduate tab. And then you have to click to update that or wait for the nightly job to run. There are some other items listed on here. So, and as I said, when you come to this screen, all of these are going to display as closed until you have something marked in a specific area. So under the optional graduation exemptions, you can see econ, fine arts, phys ed, these are all grayed out. I can't make any updates on here. Okay, those will only display when they're marked on the FN graduate tab. And then down here, we see like advanced math and science. So if a student is exempt from those, you would manually check that here. If they have completed their electives, you can check that here as well. That would be, you would only have to check that if the student took courses that don't fall under the specified course subject areas. So that wouldn't always need to be marked for a student. But again, once you update, then this tab is going to be open from then on for that student. Okay. The optional graduation requirements, these are only applicable for those students that have that optional tab on their graduation point summary. And then their career tech requirements. And then finally down here is the state seals. So at the present time, all of these must be manually checked. There's no automatic checking. There's nothing that it's not tied to, let's say like the community service that we have in student information. It's not tied to that yet. We're also still working to get these to print on the transcripts. At the current time, if you need these printed on the transcripts, the only option is to type that information in the common text area and then run the transcript just for that specific student. We are looking at possibly adding a sub-report to the transcript that would pull from here and print the actual seals on it for the students, but that is just in the beginning phases, and I don't know yet when that may come out. I know touching transcripts is a very tedious process. There's a lot of writing on those, so we want to make sure that it's done correctly when it is implemented. But once those are met, again, you're going to update your exemptions and then recalculate your graduation points to be able to view those items that were checked off. Okay. JVS data. So a while ago, they added the graduation point summary so that it could be viewed for students who are attending at a JVS. It could be a shared screen such as the Easy Query shared student screen was. And when it was initially implemented, it was matching on multiple criteria, but that has been fixed. So it's only going to look at the student's SSID, just like the Easy Query pages do. So this student, John Abbott, he doesn't have any extra tabs here. He's only enrolled in this school. Carolyn Bishop, she's here at this homeschool. She also attends the JVS. So we can see this is not going to combine the values together. It is just going to give you an overview of what the student has done while attending each building. So each tab is specific to that building. So here at the homeschool, we can see she has one state assessment that was taken. So if I click here, I can see that she took Algebra 1 at the homeschool. This has to be, this trust here has to be enabled also on the district trust screen, and that is going to the district level, which I'm not going to do since it's taking a while. And on that district trust screen, there is a grad points option on there, and you would check that at both buildings to allow them to see the student back and forth. So if we click over here to the JVS, I do still have the details in here. I can still go in here and see what assessment she has taken. I can view the credit information. The page still functions the same way as it does. The only difference is if I make any updates and click check for updated information, it's only going to update for the school you have in context. Okay, so obviously if I'm making updates here, or if it's only going to change it on this home school tab. If the JVS goes in right now and is making updates and maybe they tell me about it, I'm still not going to see those updates until they actually check this button over at the JVS. Okay, but I can still go in and see the specifics about the courses she has taken there, or the state assessments that she has taken there. Under the Analytics Hub, there is a grad points assessment remediation report. And while this is popping up here, and we also do have requests and enhancements in to print the graduation point summary page for multiple students at one time. So we are trying to get this in through the ad hocs. I don't know when that may be coming yet, but just so it would be a summary of the grad points page for all this, for a list of students. I actually ran this earlier. I was going to show you, it's under the Analytics Hub under eligibility. And if you export it, you can export it to CSV or Excel, but this is the information it's giving you, and I know that's kind of hard to see. These are, it's going to list all of the students. So it's starting here with my grade level 23 students. There's no way to filter them out. When you go to that page, it just runs for the school year. But as you can see, it's going to list the date they tested, the part, and how many times that they've tested. So if we scroll down here, we can see the details for the different grade levels. So you would just have to search for the students and see, you know, to gather the information that you're looking for. All right, what questions do you have? Yes, Barb, I agree. It would be awesome if the seals would just print from that screen. That would be much more manageable. So hopefully they can get that working, get that implemented. So what other questions do you have? Like I mentioned in the beginning, one of the most common tickets we are seeing right now is about the ELA one that's not showing. So like I said, if you just need to make sure what tab you're on, because if you're on the permanent requirements tab, it's not going to show there. It's only going to show under that 2018 plus tab for the students, since that is no longer required if they have the fiscal year began 9th of 20, well, for the permanent requirements. Are there any questions? I know graduation points is a lot. It seems to be ever changing, and after this year, I don't know, it may be changing again. I mean, I haven't heard that, but also I want to note that the extract to pull the end of course grades to be loaded for those end of course exams, that is currently in testing. So as soon as we have that completed, we will get that sent out so that it shows in the Analytics Hub, so you have that to use. So hopefully real soon here. Amy Weicker, can you explain setting up optional GPA set? Yes, that is an option under the Let me pull that up here quick for anyone who's not familiar with it. It was for 2020 graduates only. So if you go under the student exemptions requirements, here we can see this GPA, this class of 2020 only, and they had to earn a GPA of 2.5 or higher for courses taken during 11th and 12th grade. So the setup for that is just going to the GPA set. And again, this was only for 2020 graduates. So let me just click in here to edit this one. The only thing you are doing differently on here is when you're marking here, there was an option, use class of 2020 graduation option for GPA. That is what needed to be marked in order for it to calculate on there. And it would only calculate for the 12th graders in 2020. And it only works with the standard alpha GPA. So if you change it to anything else, you're not going to see that class of 2020 graduation option showing there. Okay. So that was all you needed to mark in there in order for that to calculate. Let's see here. Under the new permanent requirements section where the CCP grades can be used in place of a passing end of course, does that show a green check mark if the student has not passed the end of course, even if they have met the CCP grade requirements? No, it does not. You mean it's showing an attempt on the actual end of course, Glenda? Is that what you mean? Let me find that student here. While this is pulling up, Diane's asking for the course grades end of course records report. Will we need to be on the latest release? I cannot answer that. I know the testing with it right now is being done on 20.1, so I'm not sure if it can be used on 20.0 or not. Okay, so this was the student who had his end of course. He received points towards the end of course for government. So I think this is what you're asking, Glenda. It does not show that he completed the government. And it seems like, yeah, it doesn't show here that he completed that assessment under here. So I'm assuming it didn't do that. Oh no, our districts are looking for the green check to show an additional options, number 3, complete college work. Oh, down here. Oh, I see what you mean. Let me find that student who has. This is what was showing. Hold on a sec, because I have a student in here and it's showing in progress, but this is where we think that there might be a defect with it. Because this student did pass the algebra up here with the competency, but it's still showing as in progress. So it almost seems like they have to, it's either both, they have to pass both of them. It's like when it's looking at it, it looks at the end of course. If they pass the end of course exam with that 684 for the competency, it's not going any further to show to even look that the student attempted that math here. Yeah, so I was talking with Debbie with it yesterday, and I need to do some more testing on it and figure out exactly what it's doing because we don't think it's functioning quite as it should yet. You're welcome. Amy is back to checking that box that marks it on the 12th grader's grad point summary. No, the checkbox on the GPA set was only to calculate the GPA, but if they mark on the student exemptions that they have met the required GPA, then it will be show on the grad point summary under those optional, under that optional tab. So if the student did meet that, they're just going to check it here and update those exemptions. And then once that's done and they recalculate their graduation points, it's going to show that GPA requirement was met for those optional, that optional pathway. Won't this be easier in a couple years when we only have one pathway? So now I can look here under that optional pathways and see the student has met one of the two. Yeah, I agree, Glenda. It's probably going to change again too. So, right, what other questions do you have? All right, I will, as mentioned, do some more testing on that college course requirements. See what we can figure out and get a defect entered for that if it is not working correctly. It's just kind of confusing the way it's displaying right now. So we'll do some testing on that and get that figured out. A reminder that the assessments and the pre-IDs training is this afternoon. If you want to join, you can sign up on Coursizio. And other than that, we'll get this recording posted and get the training certificates sent out to you this afternoon also. Glenda, yes, if you have a student example too, just go ahead and send it in to me and I can use that for reference too. Thank you. All right, I hope everyone has a great afternoon and thanks for attending.